This is the Depth Mystic Community Podcast, Episode 3. My name is Zach Tolan. I am a depth mystic because of something that happened to me when I was 20 years old. Some might call it a mental illness. In shamanic cultures, they would call it a shamanic initiation. But in our culture, what do we call it? Like in our culture, mental illness is not understood as something that teaches you anything. So I had a hard time figuring out what to call myself. Like, I know I need to enter into the public sphere as an identifiable entity. But I had to make up a term to describe that entity because I couldn't find an already existing one that implied what I wanted to imply and didn't imply what I didn't want to imply. So I'm a depth mystic. If I want to sound more prestigious, I say I'm a Jungian depth mystic. Carl Jung is the most powerful and important depth mystic. But that's the category I fall into. I think depth mystic is a good term for it because something happened to me before I was integrated into society in any way. Suppose somebody told me that I couldn't call myself a depth mystic. What would I want from society instead? Like, what job would I want? What could society give me? And the answer is, it could give me some kind of community. That would be like my number one yearning. But in order to belong to something, there has to be philosophical agreement, resonance. I want to encounter people like me. I want to belong to a community of people who are like me. Now that's a tall order because I've searched my whole life and found extremely few people who are like me. How would I find such people if I didn't take on this public identity as a depth mystic? I mean, I don't already belong to a thing. I don't belong to something by default. Like the way I was raised was in a public high school with a family that doesn't think of itself as a group entity to which you belong. We never have that kind of belonging built into my family. And my schooling did not facilitate any kind of belonging. I have a mindset that is so different from other people that if I couldn't meet other people who had the same mindset, no matter what I would achieve in society, it wouldn't matter. That's basically why I don't see a better way forward for me than to find something that I can identify with, even if I have to make it up, and present myself as that thing. Because now I'm sending out the signals for people who are like me in some way. And hopefully I can create a community out of it. I'm presenting myself as a type of person. And I'm making a podcast about that type of person. And now a little bit more about our theme song. You might have noticed that our theme song sounds a lot like a video game. I was born in 1977, and when I was coming of age, so were Japanese video games. For better or for worse, at an impressionable age, my idea of what constituted good music was formed by Japanese video game composers. I did not know at the time that in adulthood I would be sent on a grand mystical journey and end up repurposing my love of Japanese video games towards an expression of this mystical adventure. But originally, this podcast was supposed to be a video game. It's actually a kind of defeat that it ended up as a podcast. Since I think of the video game as sort of the highest art form, the optimal expression of my mystical experience. Not that I fully understand how video games would express it all that much better than I'm able to do in a podcast. But you can hear what I would hope the video game would sound like in the theme song. In fact, I composed the theme song for my video game before deciding that I had to make a podcast first. I had to create a community in which my video game could hypothetically be developed and by which it could be received. Podcasts are a little bit more intimate, closer to you getting a genuine sense of who Jungian depth mystic Zach Tolan really is. And so I'm making a podcast first. Maybe what I'm calling depth mysticism is actually the samurai ethic from Japan, having been transported through art into the West, defining my general idea of what an enlightened person is. This happens most notably in Star Wars, which, if you've seen the Japanese influences of Star Wars, you can't deny them. And you realize Star Wars would not have existed without Japan. But what we have is a competition at that point between Japan and Jesus of Nazareth as modes of salvation. In the West, they tell us that Jesus is the only way, the only truth, and the only life. Why then do I want to make my work more expressive of a Japanese warrior than like Jesus? Why does that seem to be the other way, even the better way? Why would I rather be a Jedi than Jesus? Star Wars represents the depth mystic mindset far better than most of the things in Christianity. But Carl Jung warned us about borrowing entire modes of life from other civilizations. We have to do an important kind of integration of what we find in the East with our existing civilization. And Jung's life was essentially devoted to that, but the way in which he went about integrating the history of the West with a more complete and advanced type of psychology that reminds us of the Jedi in Star Wars is hard to understand for most people. Like, Jung did a great job, it's just the job was arguably too difficult. People don't really understand it. But that's what I'm trying to represent with my word depth mysticism. It's a phrase that I made up to try to emphasize the value of what Carl Jung was doing and try to incarnate, as it were, a modern example of this type of integration. Integration of East and West. But really, it's a recognition that the West is not in a permanent state. The wisdom of the West, it's evolving towards something. Most of the Western religions believe that history is an evolutionary process in which things are expected to happen. We haven't already arrived at the permanent resolution of the tensions that are acknowledged in our religions. So what people don't realize is that Jungian psychology and this thing I'm calling depth mysticism are attempts to move the history forward. Now, naturally, the meaning of all the historical suggestions in Western religion is endlessly debated by virtually everybody who adheres to these religions. Nobody really knows what the second coming refers to. And those people who do know are hotly disputed. So naturally, there's a ton of opinions. But what Carl Jung was doing was essentially offering a concrete way forward from where we are. And it's rather robust in the sense that wherever you are, you can use Carl Jung's ideas to help push things forward from wherever they are. so that you can be part of the historical process. If you have enough total consciousness to grasp it. That's the key. You can't be part of the process if you are being pushed by it. Only if you can bear witness to it consciously can you push it forward. Okay, so that's episode 3. It's a little bit piecemeal. I'm hoping to start smoothing it out in upcoming episodes.